Marcia Dale Weary, founder of the Central Pennsylvania Youth Ballet. Tell us about your school.
Well, it was founded in 55. I started teaching in 55. And
what are you trying to do there at your school?
I teach ballet. I wish every child in the world could take ballet, because I think if you see the children who take ballet or children who are in the arts, they usually feel that they have a purpose for living, a goal that they have to reach, and it teaches them to do that in any other field.
Now, I understand major ballet companies hire graduates from your school. Who are the major ballet companies in the United States, and what sets them apart?
New York City Ballet was founded by Balanchine, and that's the biggest, largest ballet company in the United States. And it's also, there's an American Ballet Theater, Boston Ballet, Miami Ballet, San Francisco, PNB, which is the Pacific Northwest. Every state has a ballet company.
What makes these companies great? What distinguishes them from other companies?
Balanchine's New York City Ballet was founded
Let's start
by
there.
Balanchine, and he was a great choreographer. He's probably considered the greatest choreographer that ever lived, and he choreographed more ballets than any other choreographer. And he founded the ballet, and his method of teaching, he changed things. He was, for instance, the arabesque was changed, or he wanted people to move more. And they're all great companies.
Now, tell us more about ballet in general. I mean, let's start at the very beginning. What distinguishes the dance of ballet from any other form of dancing? What defines it?
It's the basis of all dance. Without ballet, you aren't very good at any of the others. There's a jazz teacher, he said he takes ballet dancers before he takes dancers who just study jazz. But you have to have ballet to do almost any other type of
And
dancing.
then what is that foundation that ballet provides for other forms of dance?
It's the way you have to focus, the way you have to, the exercises, the way they develop the body, and the muscling of the muscle tone, and the discipline, the focusing. The children have to be very focused, and it just makes a much better body.
We'll talk about who your students are and how old they are, where they come from.
Students, or the ones who have gone on to become?
Your students in a general sense, the kids that attend the school.
They come from all over the United States, and even from Europe in the summertime, Europe and Asia, and, you know, almost every continent, actually. And they come to take our summer course. And then we have children from the United States who come from different states, and they want to stay here for the winter after they take our summer course.
And what are those children looking for? Do they want to become professional dancers? Are their aspirations clear?
Most of those children, of course, do. They would like to become dancers, but not everybody can become a dancer. Their bodies change. A girl's body will change sometimes when they hit puberty. And so some children, you have to be very slender. You can't have too many curves.
Is that so? How are curves a liability in ballet? Tell us.
Well, it's just not ballet. You're jumping and things like that, and you have to be lifted by a man. And for a girl, They have to be slender, and they can't be too curvy. So
What about
it's just
legs?
more. It just is more, gives a more ethereal looking. They look more ethereal, and it's. If you have you ever seen a ballet?
I've seen parts of ballet.
Yes.
So forgive me if my questions are very basic here today.
It just makes the dancer look much more ethereal when they're slender and much more graceful usually, and they make better lines with their bodies.
What about their height, the length of the limbs? How do all these physical characteristics
they usually
come
have to
into
have
play?
legs longer. They have to be well proportioned, but often girls who have long legs make very nice lines in arabesque. Doesn't mean usually people with long legs aren't the best jumpers. The shorter girls usually are better at jumping.
What is the average age of a new student that comes to your school?
Various ages. They come at all ages.
At the youngest, how young?
I would prefer to have children start at the age of about 5, 6, 7. But they come as young as 3. I don't teach those children. I used to, but I don't anymore. When I taught them tap dancing, but now we have people who teach the little tots.
Why is the age of 5 a good time to get them started?
If they are disciplined, it's just, you can reshape the body. And
Literally reshape the body?
Even if they don't have good feet, you can, you know, their little bones are softer, so you can develop better feet. And ballet takes so long to learn, so the younger you start, the better, because it's so much you have to learn. And
well, that's fascinating. You can literally reshape their bodies, huh, at a very young age.
You can.
What kind of mental discipline, I mean, that doesn't seem to go along with the disposition of a 5-year-old. Some
5-year-olds love ballet so much, and because they want to be a ballerina, you can teach them to focus. Because they want to be a dancer, then you can tell them you have to pay attention if you want to dance like Tina LeBlanc, or if you want to be a dancer like Carrie Imler or some of Ashley Bowder. You have to be able to pay attention when you're 5 years old. And I always say when they were little, they really paid attention. They focused. And so
how do you communicate with these little kids? I would expect they could be distracted by things. How do you get through to these promising people at the age of 5?
You just say, look at me, focus. You have to get down on your hands and knees and crawl around on the floor and fix their feet and tell them you have to point with the big toe, the heel has to be up. You have to pull their inner thigh muscles forward and try to make them pull the muscles on the outside of the leg back and around, and you have to put your hands on to help them feel it.
So these kids have to get used to you kind of pulling and tugging to get them to do the right thing.
The younger they are, the more it gets into their bodies, and then they feel it. It takes a long time. You have to use your brain to feel, and some people, that's very difficult for them to do.
Now, what kind of progress do you hope to see after you've begun to teach a 5-year-old? How far should they be in, say, 6 months' time?
It depends on how often they take a week. I prefer them to take at least 3 lessons a week. But if they come once a week, they don't go very far, or even twice. 3 times a week is good. And then as they get older, they take more. The older children, the children from the time they're about 8, 9, take every single day of the week. And they take all day on Saturdays usually. It's very demanding, but it's the same as if you were going to become a great violinist or a pianist. You have to study 5 or more hours a day to become even a skater, a gymnast, whatever. And so if you want to become a ballet dancer, you have to put in the hours.
You said before when these kids hit puberty, that's when the changes, of course, come about their
Yes.
bodies, and they're not always good changes for
Yes.
ballet. Tell us about that.
Sometimes they usually develop a little too much and become too heavy, and then they can't dance. And it's at the wrong age. Sometimes they'll go through that when they're 16, 17, 18, even 15, 16, 17. And then when they get into their 20s, they slim down again, but it's too late. You know, by the time they're 18, they should be auditioning to get into a company. And when you go to an audition, the first thing they do is look at your body. They don't care how talented you are. If you don't have the right body, you can't get into the company. When
children are admitted to your school, what is the process? You say you look at the body first, of course, but there's got to be some interview.
I don't look at the body. I take anybody, because I feel ballet is good for everybody. It teaches you discipline. Children who have come to me, who have gone on to college, they notice how much more discipline they have than most of the other students who go to college. So
anyone who has the desire, you'll let in?
Oh, yes, because I think it does more for them than just learning ballet. They learn to focus, they learn to work for a goal, they learn to use their time well, because they organize their time, and they get their homework done. They're usually honor students in school.
Oh, most of your students have pretty good grades?
Yes, they do.
And yet that's not a requirement.
No.
Anyone who has the desire to come.
That's correct.
And how big is the class, and how many instructors do you have there? I'm trying to get a feel for how big your school is.
In the summer, Sarah has most of that information, or my sister, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't need exact figures. Just give us a general
In the summer, we have between 500 and 600 people who come to our summer course, which is a 5-week summer course. And then we have a 2-week summer course in August, and many people come from all over the United States to that.
And how large is a typical class? What's the optimum class size to get through to kids?
In the 5-week course, it goes up to 25 in a class, or I hate to have more than 25 in a class, but the younger children are in smaller classes. We put them in the small rooms. And so I like to keep that down to about 13 or 14, no more. And we have, let's see, 6 rooms in one studio, 4 rooms in another studio, and then we rent out about 2 or 3 studios, and they're going all day. We have teachers who teach in every studio at every moment of the day. And the children they can take 4 lessons a day. They are required to take 3 every day.
Let's talk more about ballet in general. Earlier you said you applied the word ethereal to its physical expression. And talk more about that. What's being expressed through ballet that moves you?
It's what happens to them is their soul develops, and they can listen to classical music, Beethoven, Chopin, Mozart, and feel that music. The soul develops. There's something so beautiful. They're hearing beautiful music all the time, and then they're trying to move to it and express that music. And there's nothing more beautiful than seeing a child dancing to music like that who is developing their soul even at a young age, or playing a violin or playing the piano. What what's more beautiful than that?
What
And-
go ahead, please.
No, that's okay.
What exposure have these kids had to classical music before they come to your school?
Hardly any. That's sad. Hardly any. In the school, when I went to school, all our little songs in our songbooks were Mozart, Beethoven, and they put words to the music. So we learned classical music when I was 6 years old. Of course, my father, I'm so thankful that I had the parents I had, because he loved classical music, and I remember he would dance around with me in his arms, or we would drum on the table with knives and forks, but he would play classical music for us, especially like Strauss or Chopin, for children. It was easy listening, and children today just aren't exposed to it. So a lot of people say, oh, I don't like classical music, but they never hear it. And there's nothing. Beethoven, he was a genius. Such music, it fills your soul. Or Rachmaninoff, Second Concerto, what's more beautiful than that? And Beethoven's concertos or his symphonies, and you can listen to them a million times, and they're better every time. It's not, it really is music for the soul.
So your exposure to classical music, you give credit to your dad for that?
Yes.
What about an appreciation of dance in those days, even though it sounds like your dad was given to an impromptu dance here and there? What about ballet per se?
I wasn't able to take ballet until I was around 14. I always wanted to, but we moved around so much. And
why was the family moving around a lot?
He worked for the government during the war, the Second World War. And so we were always moving around. I had 2 sisters, and we were, it seemed like every 2 years we were in another school.
Well, tell us about your sisters for a minute. Did they appreciate the same things you did?
Oh, yes. My older sister, Sandra, she loved to study, and she learned to speak about 4 different languages. She taught French and Spanish, and she traveled all over the world. She's lived everywhere. And my younger sister, Rosemary, and I were very close buddies, but she got married and had children, and she lives in Florida. And she helped elderly people. We all liked to teach. She worked with the elderly.
And what about your mom? Tell us about your mom.
She was wonderful. She made all my costumes. She felt sorry for me, I think, when I started my school, because I was teaching every day from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And she just came in and started doing my book work for me. So I never had to do that. And she made costumes for the children. I still have some of those costumes. They were made in the 50s. And some of the costume, one time she made this lovely little costume for a young man. His name was Sean Lavery. He's very well known in the ballet world. And when we did this, it was called the Little Dutch Dance. And so then we did it about maybe 5 years later, or 10 years later, and the costume was becoming, had little holes in it. So my mother made a new one for the little boy who was going to do it. And he said, Mrs. Weary, do you mind if I don't use the new one? May I use the old one you made for Sean Lavery? Because Sean Lavery was a famous dancer at that time. So she's made a lot of costumes for dancers who are very famous now.
As a teenager in the 50s, you came to a fork in the road and decided to go to New York City to study ballet?
Yes.
And tell us about that and how the family received that news.
Well, when I went to New York City, my parents were behind me. Didn't matter. Whatever I wanted to do for any of us, they were would go along with
Any
it.
concerns about their
My-
daughter going off to the big city at a
Well,
young
no.
age?
My father would have preferred me to become an artist. He wanted me to go to art school, but when he knew that I love ballet, they helped me to go to New York, and I stayed there for all summer studying. But I was teaching little children at the time, so I would bring 2 children up and they would stay with me for 2 weeks, and they would go home. Maybe 2 more would come up and they would go home. So that's one way I was able to afford it, besides giving them the experience of taking it to some of the schools in New York. And
How long did you stay in New York?
I would stay the whole summer. Then I would come back home to Carlisle and work in the Sentinel. And then I would make enough money to go back and stay for a summer. Then I would come back, and I did that for years.
Oh, the Sentinel, you say? That's the Carlisle newspaper?
Yes, that's right.
What did you do
I
there?
did the little ads, classified ads.
And when you came back to Carlisle, at some point there was a vision for a school. And how did that come about, and how did your experience in New York City maybe shape what you decided to do
Well,
with that
when
school?
I went to New York City, I was sort of the star in my school, my little hometown school, and I was doing solos. So when I went to New York City, I thought, I'm going to be a star, or I'll be able to dance in a big company. And I studied like at Carnegie Hall, Ballet Arts, and some of those places, but I felt there's something wrong. I'm not learning what I feel I should be learning. So I looked in the phone directory, and I went like this, and I said, I'll try this school. So I went to that school. It was the Ballet Repertory. And when I went in, they auditioned me, and they said, oh my goodness, where did you study? You don't know anything. You're going to have to start all over again. And they brought in teachers to see how badly I did grand battement and all the steps. And I remember I was about 18.
Well, that sounds like a real emotional set. Was that an emotional setback for you?
Well, I called my mother and I said, Mother, they tell me I have to start all over again. She said, well, are you staying or are you coming home? And I said, I'm staying. So I stayed, and she was wonderful. The teacher, Thalia, she wrote first, second, and third steps in ballet. You can still buy those at Barnes and Noble. But she was a wonderful teacher. She was so patient. She was so careful in the way she taught technique. And there were other teachers there too. But I learned so much from her. What she taught me was the basics. And without the basics, see, I was going ahead without knowing the basics. So she started me again with basics, and that's what I found out. You have to, how important that is.
So what were the basics? Can you articulate them for us?
The basics are understanding how to use your muscles. It's very hard to explain this to you, because when I took dancing, maybe I was just taking my foot out to point my toe. And I thought that's all there was to it. Oh no, you have to pull the inner thigh muscles forward. You have to get the seam of your shoe up to the ceiling, your big toe on the floor. The whole leg has to be turned out. It has to start from the stomach muscles.
The toe's not enough.
It starts from your stomach muscles, and if you don't hold your stomach muscles, you can't hold your buttock muscles. If you don't hold your buttock muscles, you can't turn the muscles out in the inner thigh. And if you don't turn the muscles out in the inner thigh, you can't point correctly and make your foot look beautiful and point with the top of your big toe. Ballet is based on turnout. And without turnout, without understanding where it comes from, you can
muscle-wise,
you can take for 30 years and not know anything if you don't understand the basics, where the turnout comes from. It comes from the stomach, and that's where it begins.
Were there other habits that you had to work on undoing?
Oh, yes, so many. I had to undo everything I learned because I developed the wrong muscles. And so I had to start all over again at the age of 18. So then I thought, I knew I was too old to become a dancer, and I knew my body wasn't right. So I thought, I'm going to go home and teach, and none of my children are ever going to go through this. You know, I wouldn't want them to come up and someone say, "Who taught you?" or sorry, you can't become a dancer now because you don't understand.
So you had this new appreciation of the basics that you wanted to bring to your students.
That's correct. I wanted them to become dancers if they wanted to. I wanted it to be a sure thing if they were talented or had the desire. And many of the children who have gone through CPYB aren't supposed to be dancers because of their bodies. Maybe the feet aren't the most beautiful, or the turnout isn't there, but they have become dancers because we work so carefully with them, and we can often make children who aren't meant to be dancers, they join ballet companies.
During day one of your class, you must be able to spot potential, I'm guessing, pretty quickly.
Sometimes, yes. I'll never forget one little girl. When I saw her, I said, no 5-year-olds in this class. We had 40 students who applied or who came in the first day. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with all these? But I said, no 5-year-olds. Well, this little girl, I looked at this little girl and we started class. And she was so talented. I thought she was about 8 years old or 7, but small. And I went over to her and I said, how old are you, honey? What is your name? And she said, well, I'm almost 6. I'm almost 6. So I said, okay, that's all right, because she was so talented. But I taught.
Was that natural talent, or did she already have some formal instruction before she met you?
No, that was natural. You could just see that body with those good feet that turn out. And I knew that little girl was going to be somebody. It's the same with the little girl I had named Tina LeBlanc. She, right away, when I saw her, there was no doubt about it. She was going to be a ballerina. I could tell she knew she was, too. And a little girl named Ashley Bowder, who's very well known in New York City. She's a well-known ballerina. And she said, when she was, one time we had someone come from the Sentinel and they said, may I do an article on one of your little angels? Well, Ashley Bowder then was about 5, and I said, do one on this little girl because she's going to be a sugar plum fairy in about 10 years, and that's what happened. And then she joined New York City Ballet, and she's very well known. But we've had a lot of very good dancers. You know, the Staffords, Abby and Jonathan are in New York City Ballet, and oh, so many have gone into that company. Little Pfeiffer, Alan Pfeiffer, and and Darla Hoover, who comes back and stages Balanchine ballets. When I saw that little girl, I said to the parents, better start saving your money because you want to send her to New York when she's older. And she was about 5 or 6. And she went on to join New York City Ballet. Now she stages Balanchine ballets. That's, not many people are allowed to do that. So she comes back and she will stage Balanchine ballets for us, but she goes all over the world to stage Balanchine ballets for people. But there aren't many people who are able to do that or allowed to do that.
Let's talk about the parents that send these kids to your school, and what kind of expectations do they typically have for their kids, and how far are they willing to go to support their kids if they want to be serious dancers?
They're all different. Sometimes I'll see a very talented one, and the parents are almost afraid for them to. I really don't understand it, because what do other children do from the age of 5 to 16? I mean, I would much rather have them doing something, even if they don't become a dancer, and go at it as if you want to be a dancer. And then when you reach the age of 17 or 18, it's possible. But if you decide not to, that's okay too. But if you don't work at it as if you are going to be a ballet dancer when you're young, you can't do it no matter how talented you are. You have to apply yourself when you're young. And that's hard for some parents, because it is time consuming, and sometimes they have to miss a birthday party, or they don't go to football games.
Let's try to get a feel for the commitment the students have to make to these classes. Take us through an average day or an average class, if you could.
Well, it's different with different ages. A little tiny tot comes in and takes an hour ballet class, and they work at the bar. You get down on your hands and knees and show them exactly every day. And maybe the first day, a bar consists of many, many exercises. And maybe the first day you only get through 2 of the exercises, because you're explaining exactly how to do them. Maybe the second lesson you get through 4, until you finally build up the bar and then begin in the center. It takes a long time. For a child who is already a very talented one, let's say at the age of 9, she comes in at sometimes 4:30 or 5:30 and stays until 9 almost every day.
4:30 in the morning?
No, oh no.
Okay, good.
4:30 in the afternoon. And then all day on Saturday. They usually stay all day. And some will even come in on Sunday. You know, that's not, they don't have to, but some want to. And
well, let's talk about the life of a professional ballet dancer. They've graduated your school. They have lots of promise. They show promise. They're hired by a major ballet company. What is their life like as far as committing themselves to their art?
That would be better. It would be better if you would ask them. But they...
Well, I figure you hear from your students. They must give you a call.
They have rehearsal. They get up in the morning. They go take a class. They have rehearsal. Then maybe they eat lunch, and then they go back and maybe do another class, another rehearsal, and then they perform. When they're performing, when it's in season. But they have days off. They have Sunday off, and sometimes another day. But it's, I know, and they'll have a couple weeks off for vacation. They do have to perform sometimes on Christmas, days that we are on our holidays, Christmas Eve or New Year's.
Do they have to stick to a strict physical regimen?
Some do. Some children, some of the young people stay slender naturally, and others have to really watch what they eat. Be very careful. I always tell my children, eat vegetables. That's a dancer's favorite food. Vegetables, fruit, cereal without sugar. You know, eat cereal every morning, put fruit on your cereal. Eat a big salad every single day. And those are the best foods. Fish. But I say, not only does it help you stay slender, it also is better for your brain. You can focus more. You feel better. If you eat foods that make you feel tired, then you come to class and you can't think, and then you can't learn. So if you eat foods that make you feel good, then you come to class and you can think better and you learn a lot more. And it's the same way if you go to school. So just learn to eat well.
Will a few pounds in either direction make a difference in the performance of a dancer?
Especially, yes, yes. If you get too heavy, they don't use you, and finally you're let go. Because
when I say a few pounds, I mean, say, less than 5 pounds?
Well, they'll keep you until, and see if you can bring that down. You know, they'll let you stay, but they often don't use you in ballets. For one thing, see, the gentlemen have to lift the ladies, and so a girl has to be light, and she has to look like doesn't weigh anything when they lift her. The young man can't look like he's straining to get her up. Has to look easy.
Talk more about instructing a boy versus instructing a girl.
Well, we have the little boys take with the little girls until they get a little older, and then we have men who teach them. I have Laszlo, and you know, I have some young men who come and who teach them, and I have Bruce, and we always had Richard Cook. He passed away, but he was wonderful for partnering. He taught them partnering. And then I have some other wonderful instructors, female. Leslie has been with me since she was 7 years old, and she's excellent with the children. She'll give them private lessons, Leslie Hench. And her children also studied, and they became well-known dancers. And so many of my instructors took from me when they were little. I have a young lady named Sarah, and she's very good. And Ree is good with babies. And
babies?
Yeah, the little babies. I call them.
These are your
3 and
toddlers.
4. 4-year-old. She teaches them discipline. She's very good teaching them discipline. And then I have Melinda, who has been with me since she was 6. And Marinda, her sister, was our manager. She just passed away also. She was only 51. We really miss her. But
when you see a teacher really get through to a student, what's that quality that connects them with the kids and then in turn gets a nice result, nice performance?
What is good in our school is we discuss the children. I'll say, let's say a little girl named Mary is having trouble, you know, focusing, and she's not doing, she has a hard time keeping her knees straight. I'll just say that. And then Leslie will say, I'll work on that too. Or I'll discuss, now today we did a certain bar. I added Grand Battement today. So she said, well, I'll add that too, and that maybe I can add something the next time I teach them. So we're always discussing what we're teaching them. I'll say, today we did quarter turns for pirouettes, and so we'll work on that for a while. And then I say, well, today we started half turns. And then she says, well, today I tried full turns. So we're always talking, and we're always talking about the little individuals also, and what we could do to help them focus more, or, you know, understand certain techniques more, that they're having a hard time. Or did you notice that so-and-so is having a hard time understanding this? And so we're always discussing the children.
Tell us more about choreography. Once each child is taught individual skills, does the choreographer bring these parts together?
Yes. Now, I'm not a choreographer, but I always do the baby.
So what's the difference between what you do and a choreographer?
Well, what I do is the babies learn, the little 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds learn so many steps a year. They learn their bar, and then they do certain exercises in the center, such as a port de bras. And they add the port de bras. We keep adding, and changing the arms. And they learn to do a tendu side. That's pointing your toe. They learn to use the shoulders as they point their toes. This is in classwork. They learn to do a little balance, that's like a little waltz step, or a little waltz step coming forward and one back. And so for the show, I just put all those little steps they learned together to make a little dance. So even the little 6-year-olds can perform, and it's good for them to perform. It really helps them along with if they want to make a career of it. And that's what a choreographer does. He comes in and he watches a class, or she watches a class, and she sees what they do well. And so then they put those steps into their choreography. One of my teachers, Melinda, teaches the teenagers who started late, and they're not quite as advanced for their ages as the ones who started when they were little. So
you make adjustments to accommodate these late starters.
She makes choreography that is beautiful for them, and she's so good at doing that. Whereas other Balanchine, you have to use the very advanced students to do his ballets. George Balanchine, he was the founder of New York City Ballet. But if you do his ballets, they have to be very advanced. Not many schools are allowed to do his ballets. There are more now. For a while, we were the only school who was allowed to do them, except for their school, New York City Ballet School. But now there are more, because there are more advanced young people now. But for a long time, we were the only ones who were allowed to do Balanchine.
Have you seen kids develop their skills, maybe unexpectedly, maybe on day one you didn't spot a lot of potential, but then there was a breakthrough and they really came around?
Oh, yes. I've had a couple. I had one little girl, and she had bad little legs. They always looked bent. She couldn't straighten her knees. And she wasn't turned out. She didn't have good feet. And this little girl wanted to dance. I said, honey, you play the flute so well. Maybe you should really focus on your flute. And she just was heartbroken. So I took her to a doctor, and he looked at her. And he said, no, those bones are locked into that position. You won't be able to straighten them. And she was hysterical. She cried and cried. So he felt so badly, he sent me a letter and said, tell her to sit on the floor every day and push her knees down to the floor and pull her toes back, and it will disguise that look. The muscles will disguise that look. She was obsessed with that. She did that every day. And she became a ballet dancer in a company. She was, just determined. And I've had other children that I remember. I had one little girl that someone said, why do you encourage that little girl? This was a famous person who said that to me. I said, well, this little girl, there's something in her. She has this great desire. And she went on to dance. She just worked and worked. She came in one time when she had a cast on her leg. And she stood at the bar and she'd kick her leg up with that cast on. Then when it came off, her leg just flew up. But she did. She went on to become a principal dancer in her company. So,
what about extra talented male students?
It's easy for them to get jobs. It's easy for
Is that so?
male,
It's easy. Why?
Because there aren't as many. There's so many females and not enough males.
Supply and demand.
So even if a boy isn't, a girl could be 10 times more talented than the boy, but the boy gets the job because they need the men. But it's not it used to be that way. It's getting a little more difficult for boys to get jobs now. They don't get them quite as easily. A boy has a tendency to be a little more lazy because they know, in my school, for instance, they know I'm the only one who can do that lead, so I don't have to work as hard. I know I'll get it anyway. And that's how they usually are, because it's true. You need them.
Do they have to build on the same basic foundation as girls?
Yes, exactly. Only they do more jumping, and they'll jump up in the air and turn 3 times, 2 or 3 times, and come down. Every boy today has to learn to jump up and turn twice with his legs in 5th position and land. Every boy. They have to be able to do grand jumps, huge jumps, and it's just different. They have to be able to lift girls in partnering. They have to be strong, have strong arms.
Let's turn away from ballet for a moment and tell us what you do or think about or do for relaxation when you're not concerning yourself with your young students.
Mostly I read. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Biographies, and in the summertime I like to read mysteries because they're very relaxing.
What kind of biography do you favor?
My favorite one was John Adams. That was great. But I read all kind of biographies. And then I loved the DVD of John Adams. After I read the book, someone gave me the DVD, and that was excellent. I could watch that over and over.
Well, you've seen a lot of kids come and go in 50 years' time, and, well, have kids changed at all?
Yes, very much so. 40 years ago, children had... The muscle tone of a 7-year-old today is about the same as a 4-year-old was 40 years ago, or 50 years ago. Because children 40 years ago went out and played. In between classes, they would go out and play dancing on the lawn, or they would be running or swimming. We have a little swimming pool. They get in and swim. And then they'd come back and take class. And then, they were always active. And children played hopscotch, jump rope. Today they sit around with their little, computers or whatever. And that's what they do. So they don't have any muscle tone.
So it sounds like it's more work for you today than it was years ago.
Much more, because you have to teach them, they can't jump. When they jump, they have little bent knees, they have cooked spaghetti legs, they just dangle. They have no idea how to push off and make the knees stiff. Back 40 years ago, they did, because they were jumping all the time. So there's a big difference, and parents, unfortunately, don't know this because all the children are the same today. They're all like that. But I wish it takes longer to teach a child from the age of 5 to 10. A child from the age of 5 to 10 doesn't learn as quickly as 40 years ago.
Tell us more about the location of the school. I know it's in Carlisle. You're on some college campus, right?
Dickinson. We have, I started my school, actually I started at the band hall in Carlisle. And then my father and I looked all over Carlisle to see if we could find a studio. And I happened to see this barn, and I saw the property was for sale. I said, maybe we could make the barn into a studio, and that's what we did. We bought the barn, and my sister Sandra and I, and one of the fathers, and my father made the first room where there were goats. There had been goats. That was our first room. But the barn was the first studio. It has 4 studios. It started out with one small one. And then we had neighbors who made the real big room in the barn. They just constructed a whole extra room for us. And we have 2 other rooms. And then Marinda found this space at Dickinson, and she was our manager. So she was working at Dickinson. Her office was there, and there was all this huge warehouse. But she brought Darla Hoover, who does Balanchine's, stages his ballet. She comes around a lot. But she took Darla and said, "Darla, look at this space I have for offices." And Darla said, "Wait a minute, I'm not looking at that. Look at all this space you have in this warehouse that we could make studios." So Dickinson allowed us to put studios, and we have 6 big studios there. Actually, 4 big ones and 2 small ones. But that's how we were able to get that's such a nice facility. We still feel that we could add more. We still feel we just don't have quite enough room, especially in the summertime when we have all those children coming in.
I understand there's a ban on jewelry and makeup. Why is that?
It's well, jewelry, if you're dancing with a boy and you have a ring on, you know, it can snag him. The dangling earrings just don't look, you know, they don't look right. Well, they can wear little earrings, and they wear sometimes the little diamonds. That's fine.
Do you get resistance from the kids who want to express themselves?
Every once in a while. But we tell them, we say, if you want to go somewhere else, go, fine. But here you're not allowed to do that. I like things that don't distract them. And if they have earrings, sometimes they even get caught and they're pulled off. And it's just better if they come in and wear simple leotards and pink tights and not a lot of junk, because it's too distracting. Their mind should be on what they're learning, and not, you know, they should wear clothing that's comfortable. If they wear leotards that have all these things on the back and lattice work, and sometimes they wear leotards that are so uncomfortable, they're always pulling them up, and so I say no, they have to be a certain, you know, up here, and you can't wear leg warmers, you can't wear all that junk. They're not allowed to.
Do you hear from students very often? Maybe you get a surprising phone call once in a while from an especially talented and then a successful ballet dancer. What kind of reward does that give you?
Oh, great, wonderful reward. I just went to see Tina LeBlanc, who is a prima ballerina, and she was retiring. And I'll never forget that. But I'll get phone calls from them when they're going to have their first baby or their, you know, things like that.
You hear about the big life events as well as the professional success.
Yes, absolutely. And they come back and want to show me their babies. I feel like I have a lot of grandchildren.
What else would you like to accomplish with your school?
I always dreamed when I first started, I always dreamed that I wish I could have a theater or somewhere to perform in Carlisle. It's very difficult to perform in Carlisle because the Mathers Theater is too small, and the Carlisle Theater, there's no curtain, there are no dressing rooms, and you know, it's almost impossible to perform there. And I always wanted to have a theater, so that's what I would love to have. Or at least what we could do is we would like to have a huge studio and then have a dividing line where you can close a wall or open the wall and put make this one of them higher, and then we could perform there. We could put bleachers or chairs and have performances in Carlisle. A lot of people can't go to the Whitaker Center or Hershey, and they said if only you could perform in Carlisle, we would go to all your performances, but it's so difficult to perform there.
50 years after the inception of your school, what keeps you doing this?
Just, if I had my life to live again, that's how I would want to live it. I just love being in the arts. Such a beautiful world. So beautiful. I'm sorry for people who don't live in that beautiful world, who can't hear that beautiful music, who can't see these beautiful people who are in this world, who can't see these beautiful children doing something worthwhile and beautiful with their lives.
Marcia Dale Weary, founder of the Central Pennsylvania Youth Ballet, thank you.
Thank you.
This PCN profile and more than 300 additional profiles is available for purchase on DVD or VHS for $29.95, including shipping and sales tax. To order your copy, visit the PCN store at www.pcntv.com or call 1-866-726-8433.